Good evening. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Kalamata, Greece on September 1st, 2024. As you can see, I'm joined again today by my colleague and friend from Beirut, Lebanon, Laith Marouf. Thank you very much for joining me, Laith.
Great to be with you, Dimitri.
And as my audience will know, but in case you don't, I'll just remind everyone that Laith is a geopolitical analyst with particular expertise in West Asia, and also the executive director of Free Palestine TV. Before we get into it, Laith, why don't you give us just a quick update on what Free Palestine TV is up to nowadays?
Well, we launched our coverage from the ground in the West Bank. We have one of our new journalists who's reporting from Jenin on a daily basis. In fact, yesterday he put in 2 reports. So the donations that are coming through our website, freepalestine.video, is allowing us to expand the coverage. Please continue donating and subscribing for monthly donations. We're trying to hire more journalists in the West Bank, in Tul Karim, in Hebron, in Khalil, Nablus. So, and this is along with all the other content that we're continuing to produce, the weekly shows of interviews with the prisoners of war in Palestine, the Wartime Cafe, and the coverage on the ground here from Lebanon, as well as the translation of all the operation videos. Please continue giving generously at freepalestine.video.
And Laith, quick question. Your correspondent in the Jenin refugee camp, is he reporting in English or Arabic or both?
He is, doing both. So his intros and outros are in English most of the time, but we're subtitling everything, because he has having to speak to residents on the ground. They're short clips, but include all the important information. Yesterday, he filed a report from an exodus from one of the neighborhoods in Jenin, and also filed a report on the destruction of the old market in Jenin that was deliberately destroyed by the Zionist colony.
And by the way, I can tell everybody who's listening in on this conversation that because I was in Jenin in March of this year and in other refugee camps in the occupied West Bank, there are very, very few people reporting on the ground. So Free Palestine TV is doing indispensable work there, particularly in light of the conditions, the deteriorating conditions which we're going to discuss today. But before we get to the subject of the West Bank, I want to begin our discussion, Laith, by talking to you about an article that the New Yorker just published about the murder of 24 Iraqi men, women, and children by U.S. Marines on November 19th, 2005 in Haditha, Iraq. That may be familiar to some of you, the Haditha massacre. But when I saw this article this week, I, for the first time, honed in on the details of this partly because the article disclosed for the very first time ghastly photos of the aftermath of the atrocities, and because the details of this thing simply boggle the mind. And I'm going to quote from the article, the New York article, briefly. And I'm quoting: "A mother, Ada Yassin Ahmed, who was 40 years old, was found surrounded by her dead children in the family's bedroom. Everyone on the bed was shot and killed by U.S. Marines. Saba, 10 years old, Ayesha, 3, Zainab, 5, Mohammed, 8, and Ada. The sole survivor was an 11-year-old girl, Safa, who hid in a corner next to the bed during the shooting. A U.S. Marine shot Zainab in the head." That's a 5-year-old child. And I continue, I'm continuing quoting from the article. "The killings came to be known as the Haditha massacre. 4 Marines were charged with murder, but those charges were later dropped. General James Mattis, who went on to become Secretary of Defense, wrote a glowing letter to one of the Marines dismissing his charges and declaring him innocent. By 2012, when the final case ended in a plea deal with no prison sentence, I repeat, no prison sentence, The Iraq War was over, and stories about the legacy of the US occupation rarely got much attention. Now, I also want to quote from another article, Laith, before I ask you to opine on all of this. And this was an article published by Politico on July 19th. It was authored by two surgeons who did a tour of duty in Gaza during Israel's ongoing genocide there. Quote, while touring the hospital, we walked through one of the ICUs and found multiple preteens admitted with gunshot wounds to the head. One might argue that a child could have been injured unintentionally in an explosion, or perhaps even forgotten when Israel invaded a children's hospital and reportedly left infants to die in a pediatric intensive care unit. Gunshot wounds to the head are an entirely different matter. We started seeing a series of children, preteens mostly, who'd been shot in the head. They'd go on to die slowly, only to be replaced by new victims who'd also been shot in the head and who would also go on to slowly die. Their families told us one of two stories. The children were playing inside when they were shot by Israeli forces, or they were playing in the street when they were shot by Israeli forces. Close quote. Now, Laith, in our various conversations during this abomination that's unfolding in Gaza, we've often referred to Israel and the US as one big rabid dog. What do you make of the revelations about the Haditha massacre? And why do you think the Haditha photographs are being published now after 14 years during this genocide?
Well, I'll start with the last one. It's clear that the world has been made accustomed to broadcasted atrocities and genocide, where it used to be that you'd have to go to the dark web to find snuff videos that show the murder or torture of a human being. Now you can just go on your Twitter account or Instagram and you can find an instant non-stop feed of those videos. So it's now becoming a norm, and clearly it is not a problem for anyone who is a member of the imperial domains, citizen of that, committing genocide and atrocities like this are now protected by the whole might of the empire. And we look back at what happened in Iraq. 500,000 Iraqis were killed in the initial bombardment in 2003, and then another million died during the fight after the occupation began. So 1.5 million Iraqis were slaughtered at the hands of the West, but there was no cell phones or Instagram or X at the time or TikTok for us to see that flood of genocidal actions happening in front of our eyes. So this is where the change of technology now has affected how we view things. The truth of the matter is that all the West as a whole would wish to cull all of the rest of humanity. For decades we've been hearing Western elite and scientists and whatever you have talking about overpopulation of the planet. What do they mean by that? There is no overpopulation of the planet. What they meant is that the rest of humanity in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, their populations were bouncing back at the end of World War II after 600 years of culling of those population. And the West is scared, the collective white, imaginary whiteness is scared that their numerically will return to their original percentage of this planet. It shouldn't be that there is more than 15% of the population of this planet that is origin from Europe because of such a small location. And this is what scares the West the most. And this is why we see right now it's a similar how the Zionists are dealing with the population of the Palestinians there. targeting on purpose children, targeting on purpose women, because they want to end the bloodlines of Palestinians, make the Palestinians unable to repopulate their land after such a genocide. And so this is the bigger picture. The West has been doing this for 600 years. They called the 100 million people in the Americas 100 million, okay? And let's not forget what they did recently, not only to Iraq, of course, but to Libya. 500,000 Libyans were killed in the invasion of Libya. And Libya's population is like less than a third of the population of Iraq. So a higher percentage of the Libyan population was killed in the invasion of Libya. 500,000 Syrians were killed. All of these Arabic peoples that were called genocided since the quote-unquote Arab autumn, Arab spring they call it, were called and genocided in order to maintain the power of the Zionist colony in the region and to keep the population of countries that are not under direct American control down. This whole experiment of cutting up the Arabic world into city-states like Qatar and Bahrain and the Emirates, and cutting off Arabia from the rest of the Arabic world and while also destroying the population capitals, the cultural capitals, the scientific capitals of the Arabic world, like Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and Sana'a, is to engineer a new Arab, to bring up the numbers of people in the Gulf countries while bringing down the numbers of the true Arab capitals of culture and politics.
Laith, I traveled across West Asia, as you know, in March of this year, visiting Baghdad for the very first time, meeting with leaders of resistance groups there. I was in Qatar, and I went to Amman in Jordan, West Bank and Eilat. I went to the border of Gaza, and I went to Beirut. And for the very first time, I began thinking differently about the genocide in Gaza and began to contemplate the possibility that, and from a legal perspective, that one could plausibly argue that what is happening in Gaza is a chapter of a larger, geographically broader, longer-term genocide in West Asia that encompasses not only the Palestinians, but also the people of Iraq, the people of Lebanon, the people of Syria, the people of Yemen, and that this is really a multi-decade genocide being inflicted upon these peoples by principally four powers: the United States, Britain, France, and Israel. Now, I know you're not a lawyer, but from a sort of historical perspective, and as a layperson and someone who has deep knowledge of the region, do you find that to be a more plausible interpretation, that this is really an ongoing genocide that has been unfolding over decades throughout this region, not only in Palestine?
You are right. And I just want to say Arabic people are so dehumanized. Most people don't understand that the Arabic peoples in North Africa and West Asia suffered the largest loss of percentage of population out of all any cultural linguistic group on the planet between World War I and now. Okay, during the World War I and World War II, most of the Arabic countries in North Africa and Western Asia lost half of their population. Some of them, like Libya, had lost 2/3 of their population. Okay, under Italian occupation, Libya lost 2/3 of their population. So now add to it the millions that have been genocided since the end of World War II in the various wars in North Africa and Western Asia. And you will understand how the enormity of the loss. You know, if today Libya's population is 6 million, when you talk about a loss of 2/3 of the population before even and during World War I, that means that Libya today should be over 30 million people, right? When you talk about Algeria losing half of its population before it gained independence through the revolution, then and today their population is 35, 37 million, then their population should be actually closer to 90 million. It should be larger than the population of France, the population of Algeria. Similarly, Lebanon, you're talking about 4 million right now, their population, but in reality, they should actually be closer to 20 million, because not only because of the genocides, but the mass exodus because of the non-stop wars that this region has suffered. This is why there's 14 million and some people say 18 million Lebanese diasporas outside Lebanon, and there's only 4 million inside Lebanon. So this is the reality. People need to. We are the most maligned people on this planet, the Arabic peoples, and we've suffered so much but people don't even recognize this suffering. Yes, most of the planet recognizes the suffering of the Palestinians and the genocide that they're, but most people cannot contextualize it in the wider genocide of the Arabic peoples that has been priority number one for the West, the collective imperial domains in the last 100 years.
Let's turn our focus now to the West Bank, Laith. And as I mentioned earlier, and I previously reported on this channel, I was in the occupied West Bank in March. I reported from numerous Palestinian refugee camps along with our mutual friend, and I think she may actually be a distant cousin of yours, Rehab Nazal, from Jenin and Tulkarm, amongst other refugee camps. And residents there described to me daily Israeli atrocities. I saw the aftermath of numerous incursions, the destruction of infrastructure like water pipes, sewage pipes, medical clinics, childcare center, and so forth. And this was happening on a daily basis. And by the way, the overall impression I had from speaking with Palestinians living under occupation in the West Bank, I got to the Gaza border, but I was not able to actually enter Gaza, so I wasn't able to communicate with people there. But the overall impression they gave me is that what they had been witnessing since October of last year was as bad as anything they had experienced from the Israeli regime in their lifetimes. Then on August 11th, Israel's finance minister, Israel Katz, called for, quote, evacuating, close quote, the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank and handling it similarly to the Gaza Strip. And this is exactly what he said. The refugee camps are the epicenter of evil. They are not under the control of the Palestinian Authority, but under the control of Iran. Now, Laith, since then, there has been a dramatic turn for the worse in the West Bank, and you touched upon this at the outset when you talked about your new correspondent in Jenin. Could you summarize for us what is now going on in Jenin and the occupied West Bank since Israel Katz gave this genocidal speech?
Yeah, it's been now 5 days of a siege and invasion of most of the large cities in the north of the West Bank. Jenin, Tulkarm, Nablus are the main targets of this invasion. And just a few hours ago, just to give you an example of how severe the damage is, just a few hours ago, the mayor, the governor of the Jenin region, said that 85% of all of the infrastructure electricity, water, and communication has been destroyed in the city of Jenin. 100% of that has been destroyed in the Jenin camp. And that, the majority, there's almost $200 million of damage in the city of Jenin right now because of they actually destroyed almost all the streets. They ripped up all the asphalt in practically all the streets in the city over the last 5 days. There's huge sections of the city and the refugee camp where there was a mass exodus over the last 3 days, including people running away through the forested area beside the city to hide from the Zionist military, destruction of most of the city center, the markets, and so on. Those were deliberate actions. And we see that happening in this area of the north west of the West Bank because Ben Gvir and Smotrich and others want to actually colonize this area. Jenin and Tulkarem and so on are very close to the apartheid wall. They're and have been always centers for resistance. So this is part of the plan, and I think the Zionists are emboldened now, seeing that the West is allowing them to conduct live broadcasted genocide in Gaza, that they can actually copy that in the West Bank, and that they have the approval for it. And just to be clear, I believe the West has given the Israelis the approval to genocide all the Palestinians if they want to. And so the only thing that is going to stop this genocide is resistance, physical resistance to it on the ground and in the imperial domains. Those who have the courage and the honor to stand against their states being involved in this genocide, that's what's going to stop it.
I cannot stress this enough, and I think it's important to say this because of the next subject which we're going to talk about, which is censorship. I think it's fair to say, and you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, that you and I are two persons who are first and foremost committed to peace. But Western governments have unquestionably gone all in on this genocide. I mean, if they're not going to pull the plug after all the horrors that the world has seen, then why would they pull the plug on any future horrors? Because Israel has committed pretty much every imaginable atrocity with complete impunity and bragged about it. And when you see people detainees being raped, a poll just came out which showed that 65% of Israeli Jews think that soldiers who are accused of raping detainees should not even be prosecuted, let alone serve prison time. And the Western governments continue to arm this regime. Then there's no question that they are not going to use the leverage that they have over Israel, which is to stop sending military and economic aid, which would bring the genocide to an end instantly. And they're going to allow Israel to, as you say, entirely cleanse historic Palestine of Palestinians. So that puts people like you and me in a bit of a quandary, and many of us out there, people who are determined to stop this. The quandary is that we can't. The peaceful means of ending it have been taken off the table by those who control those means, Western governments. So we can either sit back passively and allow this monstrosity to be completed, or we can openly advocate for armed resistance, or at least show moral support for those who have the courage to take up arms against this monster. And I want to say, because again, we're going to talk about this next, I'm a lawyer. I observe my obligations as a lawyer. I understand that there are resistance groups that have been designated as terrorist organizations. That places constraints upon me in terms of what I can and cannot do. I respect those constraints, but I will defend with every fiber of my being, the right of these oppressed peoples to take up arms to defend themselves from this monstrosity because they have no other alternative.
Before we talk about the repression that's happening in the West right now, you remind me of one thing. The American soldiers that raped and massacred in Haditha, we didn't see, even though they were, let go and then end up in jail, and they were, lionized by some politicians in the West, we didn't see other American soldiers rioting or Americans rioting for the right of American soldiers to rape and genocide at will. Then, when the story came out, today, maybe I would say, if American soldiers are caught committing rape and genocide televised, that you may find actually members of the armed forces of the US and the public in the US rioting to free them from any prosecution or jail time. And so we're getting right now to that point of normalization.
Mm-hmm. With that, let's then turn to this subject of censorship. It seems, Laith, that as Israel has rained more and more barbarism and savagery down upon the Palestinians, Western governments have intensified their repression of dissent. And it's almost as if Israel's criminality and the West's censorship move in lockstep. The more diabolical Israel behaves, the less we in the West are permitted to condemn it. So with that as background, why don't you talk to us about the most recent grievous assaults upon free speech in Western countries?
There was, for a long time, I would say on this show and others, that I think the only significant movement in the West against the genocide in Gaza are Palestine Action, which were occupying and destroying the factories that produce weapons for the Zionist colony in the United Kingdom and any companies related to them. And lo and behold, of course, the United Kingdom just arrested one of the founders of Palestine Action and charged him with support of a terrorist organization. They also charged him with instigating and encouraging unlawful activities and the damage of $1 million in the equipment of Elbit Technologies, which produces the Israeli drones. And so it's clear from his case and the case of Sarah Wilkinson, who's a prominent British personality on social media and an activist that joined the flotilla to Gaza and did join other activities. She also was nabbed in the middle of the night and charged with supporting a proscribed terrorist organization. Both of them had all their electronic devices confiscated. Both of them have conditions on their bail that don't allow them to communicate with the world, tell the world what's happening to them directly, and or use electronic devices themselves. And given the wider context of the arrest and release of Richard Medhurst, another journalist blogger from the UK, just a week or two ago, and then the wider context of the banning of the ex-finance minister of Greece from entering Germany to speak in events about Palestine, and the ban of others elected officials.
Germany also threatened Ali Abunimah, of the editor-in-chief of Electronic Intifada, with prosecution, criminal prosecution, because I think he planned to give a speech by Zoom in which he was going to condemn Zionism. And you've also, maybe you were going to mention it, the case of Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram, who has just been arrested in France. And my understanding about Pavel Durov, and by the way, Telegram is widely used by resistance groups, as you certainly know, Laith. And a number of them came out and said upon the arrest of Pavel Durov that they believed he was being arrested primarily because the Europeans are trying to force him to deprive them of a platform. Durov, I understand, was accorded honorary citizenship of France because he resisted what he viewed as censorship initiatives by the Russian government, who never put him in jail. And I've seen reports that the way he was arrested was that he was invited to dinner with Macron, the president. There's absolutely no depth to which these fascists won't stoop in order to achieve their nefarious agenda. I mean, do you have anything to add to this sorry tale of silencing of people of conscience, Laith?
Yes, I mean, I think we are just seeing the beginning of this. And I've said this for a long time, since the beginning of this genocide, because this war is not going to end except with either the complete defeat of the Zionist colony or the complete genocide of the Palestinian people, that this war will expand, maybe not as fast as most people want it or those who want the genocide to end. But once we are at this stage and, seeing these signals of what the UK is doing or what France is doing, signals to us that we're approaching closer and closer the direct public involvement of the Western militaries in the confrontation in Western Asia against the axis of resistance. So they're preparing themselves for that moment. So they're kind of clipping the wings of anybody they think that could be a good opposition to them in the case of a full-out war. And I would say when a full-out war comes, there will be concentration camps, internment camps for the Arabic and Muslims diasporas, and anyone that stands with their rights to equality. This will include people like in the Pride Parade of the capital city, Ottawa, that Pride organization in Ottawa that did the statement in support of Palestine and got defunded from the whole country's establishment. They, as LGBTQ, will be rounded up and thrown in those internment camps with us. It will be an attack once these flood doors open. It will be an attack on all the undesirables, all the uppitys, all those who oppose. And it's not going to be just the Arabic and Muslim diaspora. It's going to be everybody and anybody that doesn't toe the line of fascism and supports the genocidal intentions of the elite in the West.
A year ago, Laith, I would have found all of that to be fanciful, but today, no. No, I find all of that to be completely plausible. I think the evidence is overwhelming that we are descending in the West into outright fascism, that our right to speak and to dissent is not only under assault, but it's hanging by a thread. And I must say to all those listening out there, and please, if you agree, share these sentiments with people you know. Throughout the last 12 months, we, of course, have seen many, many protests in the West in defense of the Palestinian people. But I can't remember the last time I saw a protest, not just during the last 11 months. I can remember the last time I saw a protest in defense of our right to speak freely. And it is the prerequisite to all that we hold dear. If we can't speak freely, if we can't dissent, not only can we not stop genocides, we can't ensure that our children will have access to education, that we'll have health care, that we can walk securely down the street without being arrested arbitrarily by some thuggish cops. We need to rise up and defend our right to speak freely before it is utterly extinguished, because it's on the verge of being utterly extinguished. I cannot stress that enough. I'm deeply alarmed by what I see happening, and I think that we have to marshal all of our resources and come together to stop it. Laith, I'll give you the last word before we sign off. And until our next conversation, please feel free to chime in if you have anything else you want to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think the battle in the West Bank is going to be huge. By the way, the Palestinian resistance has intensified in the West Bank. There was today an attack just outside Hebron in the south of the West Bank on Israeli police, and 3 Israeli police officers were liquidated. Yesterday, there was an attack on a gathering of Israeli soldiers. At least 2 of them are dead, again in the south of the West Bank. And we saw for the first time this morning the use of RPGs hitting armored vehicles in the West Bank. That's a very happy moment, I think, because this indicates that the Syrian military, Syrian government has been successful in smuggling these weapons into the West Bank, even with all the collaboration of the Jordanian regime and its clown military that they have. So over the last 24 hours, we saw some of the biggest roadside bombs, improvised explosive devices used yet, that blew up a D9 armored bulldozer completely. So there is a raising up of the resistance as this ethnic cleansing campaign begins. It's not going to be an easy thing for the Israelis to conduct that campaign, like not because the Palestinians have so much weapons or anything like that. Number one is because it's a huge area. Number two is because the Zionist colonists are intermingled in between Palestinian towns and cities. They're easier targets. And also because the Palestinian resistance has new weapons now. The Israelis had to deploy right now 4 battalions, which is distracting them from their operations in Gaza. The genocide campaign in the West Bank beginning right now is another indicator of the collapse of the Zionist colony. Not only a negative thing to say there's more genocide and so on. This is just another indicator of their inability to conduct their warfare, the Israelis, in a manner that makes sense strategically.
You actually have caused me to think of one additional question with that vitally important information, and that is, when I was in Palestine in March, I spent probably about 10 days in East Jerusalem. I was very surprised at the fact that there were no protests, none at all, during the 10 days that I was there. I saw many, many signs of resistance in the West Bank, and particularly the refugee camps. Is there any indication that the Palestinian population of East Jerusalem is joining this fight? Or at this stage, do they seem to be refraining from taking resistance actions? And if so, why do you think that is?
Well, first off, East Jerusalem is a ghetto, isolated completely from the rest of the world. It's as bad as it can get. So it's hard to definitely smuggle in weapons and what have you. But at the same time, there is knives, there's cars, and those things are gonna happen for sure. And also, I think the Palestinian resistance in general is not opening all the fronts at the same time. I think, for instance, we saw just a week and a half ago for the first time the return to suicide bombings, attacks inside 1948 territories, and that's gonna happen and continue to happen actually. And I think very soon we may find ourselves in a situation where the population in East Jerusalem takes up arms and somehow. So we shouldn't kind of run in front of the carriage, but it's getting there. The whole region is going to be up in arms, not only East Jerusalem very soon.
Yes. I take it your assessment that we are headed inexorably towards a wider war that will end in the destruction of the Zionist colony has not changed.
Yes, I don't think it's just the timing is impossible for us to choose or think about or predict. But the closer, I think I think the West is holding the Zionists back. The Zionists want a full-out war. The axis of resistance doesn't want a full-out war. They want a war of attrition that, where the Zionist colony collapses with the least damage to the rest of the region. But the West is holding the Zionists back until the American elections, at least, and maybe until the next American president comes in, and where they will be comfortable to commit genocide for 4 years with no possibility of change in government in the US. So I think the next 6 months will be a slow war of attrition, and then we will get to the bigger war.
Well, hold on to your seatbelts, folks, because this story is far from over, and it ain't going to get any better. That's for sure. So with that, I'd like to thank you again, Laith, for joining me on Reason to Resist, and I look forward to our next conversation.
I hope to see you soon, Dimitri. Enjoy your time in Greece.
Thank you. And we're signing off on September 1st, 2024.